Hi, everyone. We're coming to you live once again from Atlanta, Georgia, as we wrap up day 2 of the 2024 Global Ethics Summit. I'm your host, Bill Coffin, and this is the Ethicast. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the 2024 Global Ethics Summit, coming to you live from Atlanta, Georgia, and virtually online. Big shout out to everybody who's attending virtually. We've been getting your questions and comments all day long. We super appreciate the support and the participation. It's been great to see everybody be so engaged. We are wrapping up day 2 of this summit, and let me tell you, it has been a whirlwind of a day. Wall-to-wall sessions, panel discussions, and content. There's almost too much to get into, but I'm going to try to do my level best to give you a quick rundown of what happened today, what you can look forward to once the summit ends, and most of this content, not all of it, but most of this content will be available on demand afterwards. But to give you a rundown, day 2, we opened up with a data presentation from the 2024 World's Most Ethical Companies data by my colleague Neil Thurston. These sessions are always extremely important because they give us a deep dive into what the data tells us. You know, the WMEC data every year, it changes a little bit as the ethics quotient that informs the world's most ethical companies itself changes. So the data insights that come in every year are always super relevant. They always recontextualize slightly. And we're always so grateful to Neil for showing his expertise by telling us what are some of the biggest data points coming from the data pools. That's how we started off the day. We then moved on to a main stage session called The View from the Boardroom, How Ethics and Compliance Can Be a Not-So-Secret Weapon, featuring thought leaders from Morrison Foerster, General Motors, Anywhere Franchise Brands, and Algonquin Power and Utilities Corp. This is a terrific conversation about the unique value that comes when the chief ethics and compliance team really interfaces with the board to basically to keep them up to date on compliance risks, compliance best practices, and really getting the board engaged in a way that's super meaningful to the enterprise. I will stop here just to plug Ethisphere Magazine for a moment, because this session is going to dovetail perfectly with our fall issue of the magazine, which will be coming out at the end of October. The theme of that is going to be entirely about boards and governance. So if you attended this session and you went, you know what, I have something to add to this conversation, I have an insight I would love to share, we would love to have you in Ethisphere Magazine. So by all means, please reach out to us. You can visit us at magazine.ethisphere.com, and we would love to get your submission. Submission's deadline for this issue ends at the end of September, so there's plenty of time. If you want to put together an article or simply make yourself available to that editorial staff, we would love to hear from you. But the View from the Boardroom was a terrific session to get the day started, and we're very grateful to everybody who took part in it. Beyond that, we had additional panel conversations. We had Harnessing Champions to Build a Better Ethics and Compliance Week. This was featuring folks from the Tennessee Valley Authority, Prudential, FedEx, and the J.M. Smucker Company. And this, I really quite enjoyed this conversation a lot. I took a huge amount of notes personally, as it really got into some very innovative techniques on how to make an ethics and compliance week really move the needle in a meaningful way across the organization. One of the themes I saw recurring over the course of this whole session was the power of storytelling, and how these thought leaders were using compliance weeks, ethics and compliance weeks, both to advance their own storytelling within the organization, and also to use storytelling to get people to really engage in the compliance and the ethics compliance week itself. A lot of really fascinating conversation going on here, but storytelling, and we've seen storytelling come into a bunch of other sessions as well as other content that Ethisphere produces. But storytelling is just the superpower that really drives a top tier ethics and compliance program. And we saw that very much being talked about in this panel about ethics and compliance weeks. Beyond that, we had another panel discussion entitled Rethinking Third-Party Due Diligence, Moving to a Coordinated Approach Across the Organization. And this was featuring folks from Baker McKenzie, Endeavor, Flex, and Booking Holdings Incorporated. And this was talking about how you can update risk categories and streamline questionnaires without sacrificing substance in a way that makes the entire third-party process a little bit more impactful and a little bit more effective. The third-party due diligence piece is something that we have seen an awful lot of interest on this year. We've actually covered it quite a lot here on the Ethicast itself, so make sure to check out our YouTube channel and go through some of our back episodes. You can see where we're talking about it. But this panel, it was interesting about it was not just the fact that it was talking about the due diligence piece for third parties, but just how increasingly important third-party management is for any top-tier ethics and compliance program. Beyond this particular session, it's been a recurring theme throughout the course of the summit, and it's going to be a recurring theme as you go through the balance of the year as well. So if you have questions on this particular topic, please make sure to stop by the Ethisphere website on a regular basis. We're always updating new resources, new roundtable recaps on our resource center that touch upon this very, very important topic. So make sure to keep your eyes peeled on it. Beyond that, we had building the foundation for a best-in-class ethics and compliance risk assessment, featuring folks from JBS, Kohler Company, Corteva Agriscience, and Weyerhaeuser. Of special interest, I have to say, this is a mild conflicts of interest disclosure, but one of the panelists here was Michael Koenig from JBS, who I had the pleasure of interviewing on the Ethicast not that long ago. So I encourage you to check out that episode if you appreciated what he brought to this session. I'm sure you did. But this is a really meaningful discussion about how risk assessments play a super crucial role in ethics and compliance program. A proper risk assessment does so much to prevent the downstream work that so many compliance organizations have to do. And so a top tier risk assessment is just a fantastic way to make sure that your compliance and ethics program is fully in alignment with the operations of the enterprise. And it's a great conversation. So if you missed this one, be sure to check it out on demand, because lots of good stuff going on in it. Beyond that, we had a peer-to-peer session called Harnessing AI for Investigations, Risks, and Rewards. This is kind of a good news, bad news situation. The good news is this was facilitated by Cy Vance, partner at Baker McKenzie, and it was wall to wall. Literally, no one else could fit inside the room. An incredibly interesting conversation, very, very well populated. People love to see it. And it was a terrific conversation about how AI is being used by law enforcement. The bad news is this was a in-person only event. So if you weren't here to get to see it, or if you were here live, but simply the room was full and you couldn't get in, unfortunately, there's not going to be a replay of this. But have no fear, because what Cy was really touching upon here were some pretty interesting developments on AI. If you had checked out the winter issue of Ethisphere magazine that dropped in January, that was all about ethical AI. You know, AI is something that it's been talked about numerous times at this particular event, but by no means will this topic be exhausted once we all go home from the Global Ethics Summit. So if you missed this event with Cy Vance, it's okay. I think that the topics that were raised there will percolate themselves through other things that are discussed over the course of the year. And certainly, you can always reach out to Cy as well. He's super engaged, and I'm sure he'd love to share his expertise with you. Beyond that, we had Telling Tales of Integrity, Narrative Skills for Compliance Leaders. This was run by Second City Works. Now, if you're not familiar with Second City Works, these folks are wizards at using humor as a way to engage on ethics and compliance. And they did a fantastic keynote presentation last year that brought the house down. And people who are in workshops on either side of this one will tell you the sound from this event actually bled through the walls. People were getting so fired up. They're having such a great time, super energetic. But Second City is really kind of amazing at how they use, again, the power of storytelling, also the power of humor, as a way for compliance leaders to humanize what they do, to engage people in their program, and to really communicate the values of their program through the enterprise. So if you were able to take part in this workshop, then you certainly got a terrific experience. But if not, you can always reach out to Second City. We do a lot of work with them over the course of the year, but you can also reach out to Second City on your own for your own programs as well. So great stuff there. We also had another great workshop on making your training actually effective using data tailoring, and that was facilitated by Doug Allen, my colleague, and who's also Vice President of Data and Strategy. And he led an interesting panel discussion about how you benchmark against your peers and make survey data really actionable in your training calendar. Doug, as the head of our culture team, does an awful lot of work on helping organizations create action plans that springboard off of the data that comes out of a culture assessment and out of the training effectiveness. So this is what he does. And it was a really fascinating conversation as he was talking about how do you take your data insights and translate them into really serious operationalization for your enterprise. So fantastic conversation there. Moving on, we had a conversation about how to grow trust and employee confidence through transparency. That was with the panelists there were from Nobilis, St. Germain North America, Milliken & Company, and Booz Allen Hamilton. And that was a pretty interesting conversation about how ethics and compliance teams can increase transparency for both internal and external stakeholders, what some key considerations are for messaging and what to share with and with whom. In my own editorial journeys over the course of the year for Ethisphere Magazine, as well as for the Ethicast, the topic of transparency keeps coming up again and again. I would say with increasing frequency and increasing importance as sort of a key virtue or a key attribute of a really high-performing ethics and compliance program. We see transparency make a real impact on speak-up culture and on reporting. And the more transparent that operation is, the more faith it generates in people who are part of it. So transparency is a huge piece. I would definitely encourage you to come back and take a look at this, but also be sure to take a look at other data pieces on the Ethisphere Resource Center as well. Really fantastic content there. We had another data presentation from Neil Thurston regarding the world's most ethical companies data. And then we had a fantastic conversation about maintaining tone at the top. Can your culture withstand executive churn? If you haven't been following this story, it's one of the most interesting stories in corporate leadership ongoing right now. Last year saw the highest level of CEO churn in living memory. It was something, I forget the actual number. I think it was about 2,000 CEOs across, like I said, across top level corporate leaders or corporate organizations left their posts. Many of them left of their own volition. Some were actually asked to leave. Some left because of financial pressure. Others left simply because of burnout and the extraordinary levels of stress that CEOs carry on them. And this conversation was fantastic. It featured panelists from Hush Blackwell, from Dish Network, from Microsoft, and from WSP Global. And it talked about how in an era of high CEO turnover and a kind of a flattening of middle management, there is the possibility that you can lose institutional muscle memory for how the organization is going to support ethics and compliance from the very top. A great ethics and compliance program, it needs that support from the top office. And if the top office is in turmoil, then the ethics and compliance program can suffer. So this talked about how can you make sure that even if there is turmoil amongst leadership, even if your CEO leaves, your ethics and compliance program has the muscle memory, it has the institutional support, it has the alliances and the support and the relationships it needs to really make sure that what it is doing, the value it is building for the organization, does not skip a beat during all that. So it's really interesting. And I think, what we've seen already, I said before, last year was some of the highest CEO turnover we've ever seen. That is on pace to happen again this year in Q1 2024. Q1 2024, year over year, higher CEO churn than in 2023. So this is a topic really we should be keeping a very, very close eye on. Beyond that, we had additional panel conversations. And moving on from there, there's honestly, I don't mean to short shrift you. There were so many panel conversations that were terrific. A lot of them aren't available for replay. And unfortunately, I was doing Ethicast work, so I was not actually there to be part of them. I had the distinct pleasure of doing 3 Bella Asks episodes with my dear colleague Erica Salmon Byrne, as we were taking questions from the Bella membership, but also from attendees here at GES, sending them our way or kind of answering them live. So we did 3 episodes back to back to back. It was a fantastic time, but it came at a cost, which means I was not able to attend this second raft of panel and peer-to-peer discussions. But you know what? That's sort of the conference experience for everybody. You come to an event like the Global Ethics Summit, you can't actually see anything all at once, and that's okay. That's why we have so many things on demand afterwards. But that's also why we encourage you to network with your fellow attendees. So if there's something you missed and you can't actually catch it again on demand afterwards, connect with your colleagues who are there. There is no competition in compliance, and your fellow colleagues, they will let you know what you missed, and they will connect you with that great thought leadership. So that's my little bit on that part of the day. Working on from there, we went back to some final main stage sessions to bring us through to the end of the day. We had a really interesting conversation called Amplifying and Accelerating Your Impact Through Cross Collaboration. And that involved thought leaders from Lam Research, Google, McDonald's Corporation, and the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians. And this is talking about how partnering with other departments can accelerate timelines. It can make improvements that benefit multiple areas of the enterprise, and it can ensure consistency in results. So the panelists here were really talking about how they're talking about what key functions you really want to collaborate with from the ethics and compliance side, how to cultivate partnerships, how to trade value in a way how to trade data that builds value for everyone, and more. So very fundamental conversation there. Everybody I ever talked to from the world's most ethical companies in particular, they always speak to the value of cross collaboration. That's one of the things that gets their program from good to great. And this discussion really went to that quite well. So make sure you take a look at that also. And that pretty much brought us to the end of the day. So that was day 2 in a nutshell. I know I went on quite at length, but what can I say? There was so much to cover, and I had to cut it all. But you know what? There's one more thing I would be remiss if I didn't mention. Throughout the course of the day, my colleague with the Ethicast, RT Maharaj, conducted a series of in-depth interviews that really they talked about some of the timely topics coming out of this event. But they were with our friends from EY, Baker McKenzie, Morrison Foerster, and Husch Blackwell. So if you look at our YouTube channel, or if you go to our LinkedIn feed, you will see all those conversations there. They streamed directly to those, so you can see those whenever you like. But there are wonderful conversations about some of the many topics of content that were coming out of the Global Ethics Summit as well. So we had those great sponsor conversations there that RT was taking care of. RT, thank you very much for taking care of that. It's wonderful content. And I encourage all of you, if you're too busy here at GES attending sessions to see these, when you get back to your hotel room tonight, jump on LinkedIn, jump on YouTube, and check out those interviews. You'll be glad you did. They're really, really fantastic. So this brings us to the end of day 2. Day 3 begins bright and early tomorrow at 9 a.m. for opening remarks. At 9:10, we have still more data presentation from the 2024 World's Most Ethical Companies. And then we move on to our main stage sessions, starting at 9:20, Mining the Machines, creating ethical pathways for AI and digital innovation. Believe me when I tell you, you will not want to miss this session. AI is the #1 top Uber topic of the year. It is a technology that is evolving faster than we can track. It is disrupting things as we go. And it is really putting to the test ethics and compliance teams' ability to evolve in real time to make sure they can both protect their enterprise from any possible risks from an emerging technology, as well as how to harness this technology for the good of the program, how to make use of AI in a way that makes your ethics and compliance program ever more powerful, ever more efficient, ever more able to move the needle in a meaningful way. So make sure you check out that session. It's going to be fantastic. And then we have breakout sessions from there, as well as some additional panel discussions. So Wednesday is going to be just as great as today. Make sure you come by and check us out there. That brings us to the end of our wrap up. I know it's been a long one. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I'll be here tomorrow with my colleague RT for some more conversation and some more content as long as we go. But for the meantime, I'm going to let everyone go so they can enjoy the rest of their evening. And before I let you go, it's one more thing I have to say. Strong ethics is good business. We'll see you tomorrow.